Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the 20th day of September in the year of our Lord 2024. I will be talking about the second assassination attempt against the life of Donald Trump in only 2 months. The question that should be answered is, was the latest attempt just criminal negligence on the part of the federal government and its various agencies, or was it an intentional act? When I look at what happened this time, I can't help but wonder what's going on here with this political party in charge of our government, the same political party that tells us Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, a threat to America. Was this an amazing coincidence? Are good people inside the federal government and its ruling elite be out to stop Donald Trump at any price? The two soft approaches that are available to a dissident politician's enemies have already and are currently being tried against Donald Trump. If the dissident politician has enough money to satisfy him so that money doesn't tempt him, the next step is to publicly demonize him. Trump is usually referred to by any Democrat as a threat to democracy, a threat to America. He is a would-be dictator. And if elected, he would turn this glorious democracy into a dictatorship and end freedom forever. The other day, I heard a lady interviewed on MSNBC who said that he is exactly the same as Hitler. I doubt that she has a good understanding of who Hitler was and what he did, but nevertheless, it's obvious she has bought the propaganda hook, line, and sinker. Lawfare attacks are brought against the target at the same time. He is being demonized. Lawfare is a takeoff on the word warfare, meaning that the law and its power to criminalize and financially drain a person is used to put an end to a target politician's career. A simple bookkeeping transaction is converted into 34 felony charges. A hand-selected judge and a hand-selected jury complete the process. Guilty, the jury says, but only after the judge instructs them as to what they should find. It is a perversion of justice, but since these neocon Democrats are morally correct, anything they do is justified to achieve the goal of stopping Trump. So it is incorrect to say that the first two soft attacks didn't work, because they did work on many people. Perhaps even 50% of the American people are close to that number, but they didn't take their target out of the race. The only thing left then is the final solution. Since we're talking about Hitler, the final solution, if you remember from history, the final solution involves death. But that's okay. It's okay because the end is so noble it justifies any means. In the first assassination attempt, the Secret Service was understaffed because the First Lady was speaking at the same time in the same state, so understaffed. It turns out that many of the agents assigned to Trump for that speech and rally were not Secret Service agents at all, but agents reassigned temporarily from Homeland Security. In other words, they were not trained in high-value target protection, at least not much. It didn't work because Trump, although wounded, survived the assassination attempt. Well, I guess, folks, if at first you don't succeed, just try again. Please understand that the picture I just painted for you is nothing but speculation on my part. Could possibly be completely false. There's an awful lot of smoke, an awful lot of coincidence, and an awful lot of incompetence from people who are supposed to be the best in the world at what they do, but I guess it's at least possible that it's all just a massive coincidence. Last Sunday, September 15th, the former president and one of his close friends decided to go out for a casual afternoon of golf at the Trump International Golf Club. There was no problem getting a late notice tee time because he owns the club and the course. The Secret Service did not sweep and clear the entire course, but instead they cleared only 2 holes ahead of the one Trump was playing. There were no agents outside the fence, which was close to or within 400 yards of 2 different holes, thus exposing those holes to outside the course people. The first is the 5th hole. Outside that hole, across the fence in some bushes designed to shield the view of a chain-link fence, an assassin lay in wait for the Trump party to reach the 5th hole. That is very significant because Trump's round of golf was a closely held decision, unannounced and not on his public schedule, only his private schedule. In spite of all that, the would-be assassin set up his sniper's nest 12 hours in advance. How did he know? How did he know that Trump would be playing at that time? Inside information, perhaps, gave him access to the private schedule, but who knows? The assassin used an AK-47 style weapon with a scope, which would have made shooting from that distance very easy. This time, there was a confident Secret Service agent clearing 2 holes ahead of the Trump party. He saw the assassin's rifle barrel sticking through the fence, and he did not hesitate but opened fire on the assassin. Unlike the counter-sniper team on the first attempt, he did not wait until the assassin fired 7 or 8 rounds before engaging him. The agent fired 3 rounds. The assassin did not get a single shot off before he was forced to flee the scene. He left 2 backpacks full of supplies and equipment and a GoPro camera at the scene, which indicates he intended to film the event. He chose a place that had easy avenues of egress from the scene, but unfortunately for the assassin, he was seen by a passerby who took a picture of the black Nissan SUV that he used. He fled north on I-95 and made it 41 miles before he was pulled over and arrested without incident. If anyone or any group of anyone sent this lone nut / patsy on his mission, they made at least 3 mistakes this time, maybe 4. No, on second thought, it was 4 mistakes. The first is that this time there was an agent with the competence and the guts to do his job, thus thwarting the assassin's efforts. The second is that this would-be assassin was not very good and made the mistake of revealing his hide to a good agent before he was able to fire. The third was that this time the lone nut / patsy survived and was arrested. It is so much better if there is no testimony and the powers that be can just make up their own version of what happened and then just tell us to shut up about it. The fourth mistake was that this lone nut / patsy, Ryan Wesley Ralph, had a very clear political motivation, so he was therefore a lot more than just a lone nut. He also had a history and was quite famous in his own right, having been previously interviewed by many media sources, including the New York Times and many TV services. In one sense, he was a very strange individual, but in another, he fit right in with the Project for a New American Century and other neocon plans for U.S. dominance over the world by military force. Sometimes his online statements made no sense at all and were virtually indecipherable, but at other times he sounded like a very determined Washington neocon or a man who thinks ideologically motivated military intervention in foreign conflicts is the right way to deal with the world instead of diplomacy. Ralph, spelled R-O-U-T-H, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, folks, Ralph, made his political ideology and his political motivation very clear. He tried to take Donald Trump's life because of Trump's desire to bring a peaceful settlement to the Russia-Ukraine war. He was so pro-Ukraine that he traveled there and spent several months there, as he put it, to, quote, assist in the conflict. By recruiting volunteers for the International Legion, the Ukrainians rejected him as a military volunteer because he was 58 years old and he had no military experience. His publicly stated political ideology fit in a lot more with the political ideology of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Dick Cheney than it did with Donald Trump. This is a quote on that subject from Jeffrey Sachs, well-known professor at Columbia University and well-known foreign policy analyst. This quote comes via the Tom Woods newsletter. Quote, I think it's obvious there is one deep state party. That is the party of Cheney, Harris, Biden, Victoria Nuland. Nuland is kind of the face of all this because she's been in every administration for the last 30 years. She was in the Clinton administration wrecking our policies toward Russia. In the 1990s, she was in the Bush administration, Jr., with Cheney wrecking our policies toward NATO enlargement. She was in the Obama administration as Hillary's spokesperson first, then making a coup in Ukraine in February 2014. Not a great move. It started a war. Then she was Biden's undersecretary of state. Now that's both parties. It's been a colossal mess. She's been Cheney's advisor. She's been Biden's guidance advisor. It makes perfect sense. This is the reality. We're trying to find out if there's another party other than the uniparty. That's the big question, end quote. Well, thank you, Professor Sachs. Yes, there is a party other than the uniparty. And right now, that uniparty wants that other party dead, Hillary Clinton and Dick Cheney. Two peas in a pod. They act as cheerleaders for U.S. imperial ambitions. They are perfectly willing to suck the native population of America dry to fund their ambitions. Hillary refers to Trump as destructive of democracy and America, says he should not be allowed to serve because, among other things, he's a Russian agent. She has made no such disparaging remarks about the war criminal Dick Cheney. Harris may be a bubble-headed actress, but she will shut up and do as she's told, and that's good enough for the uniparty. It appears then that this second assassination attempt happened because the leading figures in the deep state / uniparty that serve as Trump's opposition wanted it to happen. This would be assassin was no lone nut / patsy. He was certainly no unhinged madman. He was an intelligent man who had traveled extensively and had appeared on many international news shows. He wrote a self-published book in 2023 entitled Ukraine's Unwinnable War. In his book, he advised Iran that, quote, you are free to assassinate Trump, end quote. The book describes Trump as a fool and a buffoon for both the January 6th riot, which turned out to be an FBI false flag operation, but I digress, folks, and also for Trump's, quote, tremendous blunder in leaving the Iran nuclear deal. Could this once again be a case of willful negligence on the part of the federal government? Is the government and the Secret Service really that incompetent? Joe Biden said, quote, one thing I want to make clear is that the Secret Service needs more help. I think Congress should respond to their needs, end quote. Well, Mr. President, the service doesn't seem to have any needs in protecting you or Dr. Jill or Kamala Harris, only your opponent, who always seems to get the B team. The FBI and other government agencies were warned many times by many people that Ralph was dangerous. One nurse told the FBI that he said he wanted to kill all world leaders. Well, one might sympathize with that thought, but thank God we are rational enough not to act on those sympathies. Ralph definitely fits the profile of a neocon terrorist. But the question is, was he the only one? Did he act alone? The social media sites quickly scrubbed his accounts as soon as he was publicly identified. By a strange coincidence, both he and Matthew Crooks, the first shooter, appeared in a BlackRock commercial. BlackRock is perhaps the world's biggest hedge fund. So what are the odds of that happening? I would guess the odds are so great there is practically zero chance of it happening by random chance. Fortunately, we have Ron DeSantis as governor of Florida. He said that the state would conduct its own investigation. He was disturbed by the relatively light gun charges filed against Ralph. Quote from the governor, quote, the state of Florida is conducting its own investigation into the second attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. It is not in the best interest of our state and nation to have the same federal agencies seeking to prosecute Trump leading this investigation, end quote. Well, good on you, Governor. Good on you. But we will see if the feds allow anyone to question Mr. Ralph. Finally, folks, Mr. Ralph was ideologically ready to go. All he needed was a little cash and a little push. Somehow, both suddenly became available to him. I admit it's just circumstantial from all the information I have seen, but this man in Ukraine, this man hiding in a sniper's hide in Florida, has CIA written all over him. At least that's the way I see it. Till next time, folks, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.